All right, good afternoon, everyone. Michael Carlier here, Director of Community Boards for Queensborough. President Davin Richards. The Borough President sends his regards. Unfortunately, he's very under the weather this afternoon, tried to tough it out, but wasn't happening. So I'll be chairing this meeting on his behalf. So just first off, thank you to all our CB chairs and staff who are here with us tonight. So this evening, we'll be hearing a presentation from the Queens Solid Waste Advisory Board. QSWAB promotes waste prevention and recovery, recycling, and encourages fair and equitable waste initiatives. QSWAB is a group made up of a diverse collection of Queens residents, business owners, civic leaders, and advocates who are committed working towards a greener, cleaner, and more equitable future in our borough. QSWAB advises elected officials along with community boards and other local stakeholders on policy issues relating to solid waste management. So here tonight on behalf of QSWAB, we have their chair, Richard Nunez-Lawrence, and with that, we'll turn it over to Richard. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael, for the introduction. I've been a part of QSWAB now for about 4 years now, since Donovan took office, and it's been a privilege because I don't come from the advocacy space of solid waste management. I come from policy. I come from legislature. I worked in the city council. I worked in the assembly. I started a nonprofit dealing with policy, general policy, not necessarily waste management policy. But while I was in the city council, I worked a lot on solid waste management, and so I was given the honor and the privilege to serve as a member, and of course as the legislative director for some time. Then I worked on my doctorate, finished it, and now I'm back as chair. Thank you, appreciate it. And so this year we've done things a little bit differently than we've done in the last few years. Last few years, we focused in a lot of ways very internally, having conversations within our group and really fighting for a lot of solid waste management policies throughout the city. There was, Skip the Stuff, if you remember, last year was a big legislative success that we championed, along with getting a lot of support from our other SWABs. We call them SWABs, right, all together. Throughout the city. Staten Island doesn't have a SWAB, so we have 4, right? And we partner a lot on legislative issues. But in particular, when you look at this right here, this is a basic information about what we do and how we do things. And you look at the first page, it's just general information, nothing too big. It's just talking about the fact that the borough president appoints us, and then we take action, right? And action in particular in recycling, sustainability, and environmental issues. But what's most important is that we represent all of Queens, right? We have folks from Southeast Queens, we have folks from Astoria, we have folks from Corona, and of course me. I live across the street, Kew Gardens, right? So those of you who know me, right? We're in the same area, so it's a really privilege just to walk across the street and meet you guys. Welcome, right? But aside from that, seriously, when you look at the second page, then you see our board. We have three members of our board. In our height, we usually get about 5 members, but we had an early election cycle, and sometimes it can be relatively typical for us to only have 3 people. So you have myself, Bilal Key, and Isaac, who's our recording secretary. And so this is, again, some of the basic information about QSWAB, and so legislation is the core part of what we do and support. We go around the city, have conversations with the other SWABs, and then we find out what the biggest issues are. Now, in some parts of Southeast Queens, for example, there may be parts of Southeast Queens to deal with flooding. Some parts of, let's say, the coastal areas of our borough may deal with mitigation issues, dealing with, beach erosion and things like that. There's other parts that may have issues with sewer management. The fact that there's just too many people dropping plastics and solids all over the street that may cause flooding issues in sewers, that may lead to flooding, that could also lead to deaths. I believe in some parts of Corona and Jackson Heights, there were some deaths last year after a big rainstorm. So these are all QSWAB issues. So when we talk about solid waste management, it's basically trying to get the plastics off the street, coming up with different policies and different strategies of how we can deal with some such things. But in addition to that, are there some areas of your catchments that would require more bins, right? Are there some areas that you think that recycling or composting would be necessary? We have these new bins that the city has that are necessary for reducing rats and in the city. They're costly. But there's legislation right now that could reduce the cost for homeowners. But what about business owners? So there's conversations of how we can reduce costs for business owners, homeowners, to make sure that we have these receptacles that can be available for all people throughout Queens. So this is the conversation that we have. Getting your support on issues are always valid. We have meetings once a month, so I invite you all to attend. It'll be fantastic if you can attend. We have our in-person meeting, our first in-person meeting since I've been a part of QSWAB, actually, and that's going to happen in a few weeks somewhere in this building. So it'll be great if you guys can attend. I believe it's March 27th. On a Thursday. So if you can attend, that'll be fantastic. And oh, no. So, I mean, we'll tell you what happened. We have minutes. and we record our meetings as well. So, we're going to, we don't have a communications chair. We usually have a communications chair that's in charge of this. But what we'll do is we'll post this through our social media, so you'll get access to all of the information that we have at the meetings. But we also have, and I put this on the third page, just a brief overview of a part of the testimony that our legislative chair, Mary Arnold, will present on March 18th in the solid waste management budget hearing. And it talks about zero waste and greenhouse gas reduction. And it's basically a 5-step plan, which is a recommendation. We don't write legislation, obviously, right? What we do is work with all the SWABs throughout the city to recommend changes, recommend things that could reduce harms to our environment, increase the amount of receptacle usage and containerization that can ultimately improve our environment, not only the streets and the flooding, but also air quality. Beyond the next meeting that we have is our April meeting, which will be at the Queens Botanical Garden. Queens Botanical Garden is home to a composting site that is a big value and hasn't been funded, as I understand from Lou Reyes, who's the liaison for the Queens Botanical Garden. It has been funded this year, but we're hoping that it can continue to get funding. It's okay, it's a really good song. But Lou Reyes is fantastic, and he's a great addition to what we do at QSWAB. And so we invite you all. It's going to be spring, so it's probably going to be better than today, maybe, right? Good weather. And it's going to be on Sunday, April 27th. So it's a good day to kind of muck around Queens Botanical Garden, and hopefully, we'll find out we'll learn some new information that we haven't known before. In our last few meetings, we've had the chair of the Solid Waste Advisory Board in New York City, Sean Borough. He's attended. He's a good friend, so it was great to see him. He's probably going to be at some of the next few meetings that we have. In our last meeting, we had Emily Gallagher, who's the new Solid Waste chair for New York State Assembly. They don't have the same setup and powers as our New York City folks have, so it's more of a recommendation than actual powers. But she's still going to be a strong advocate for a lot of the things that we support in QSWAB and all the SWABs throughout the city. And lastly, on May 29th, which is a Thursday, we're planning our first ever QSWAB conference. Now, of course, this is where you all can come by and participate and see what goes on. So we're bringing all of the activists and all of the elected officials that are pertinent in the Solid Waste Advisory Board space, right? So we're talking about environmentalists, the Environmental Justice Alliance led by Eddie Bautista, who actually had a Zoom meeting today. He's very excited about it. Big reuse, and it's in partnership with the Queensborough President's Office. So we're taking the action to, invite people and do the flyering and, do all the things that we have to do as a board. And we're working with Queensborough Hall and RSVPs and all the big people who probably wouldn't come if we just invite them, right? They have to have the office invite them, right? The power of the chair, right? And this is a really great opportunity for us to, the reason why we're having the conference is bringing all the stakeholders together so we can be able to solve problems, not just talk about problems. So often when we have our Zoom meetings for the last few years, we're just having conversations. We're just talking amongst ourselves, and we're just really great advocates who believe in what we're doing. And in a lot of ways, our enrollment dropped. We used to have about, let's say, 5 to 10 people show up in every meeting, and this year we've been really successful in having between 20 and 30 people every meeting. So it's been really positive, and so I'm hoping that with your involvement, we can be able to even increase those numbers. And I'm available to do presentations at your board meetings as well. And the more involvement we have with all of Queens in everything that we do, the better we can both all get the word out, put all of our heads together to come up with issues that we have to solve, because we're all in different pockets of Queens that have issues that you guys may know about, but we may not know about. So we put them all on the table and then come up with policy solutions that can work for everyone. So with that said, that's my presentation.
All right, thanks, Rich. Yeah, I see a question from
Yes.
Vince, CB5.
Vince Cherry, Chair, Community Board 5. Mary Arnold asked me to remind everyone that the covering of the rail cars that was funded, nothing has been done with that. The rail cars are still being brought in from Long Island, stored on the Lower Montauk line in the Fremont yards, and before they go up to Selkirk without covers, so all that solid debris comes out. And also there was funding for air monitors to see what other kind of pollution, and she wanted to remind everyone that we should be advocating for additional funding for air monitors in the corridor where the air is mostly affected. Yeah. We suffer, I guess, a lot, as much as maybe a little more than others, because we got the railroad on the Lower Montauk line on one side, and Myrtle Avenue, which is a through truck route and bus route from Brooklyn to Jamaica. So we got this, and we're in sort of a valley. So we'd like to advocate for more funding for monitors and find out why the cars have not been covered even though they've been funded.
Yeah. Any other further questions from the CB? See Heather from CB6.
Hey, Richard. What are some of the big issues that you're currently working on with QSWAB, initiatives that you've been working on this year?
The biggest thing is what's on page 3 right here. We have the zero waste and greenhouse gas reduction. And it's a specific plan through a solid waste management plan that talks about all of the things that's been here, and it lays out that 7-step plan that we're hoping to establish, which is all laid out here, which is establishing the goals, the 10 years prevention. What we're seeing is this, right? Whether we're talking about the sustainability plan, the climate leadership plan that was enacted in New York State through Kathy Hochul, or we're talking about just local measurements, what we're finding out is that they're just laws with very little teeth, right? And so because they have very little teeth and very little action, we're not really seeing that, like 10-year goals are now 15-year goals, 15-year goals are now 30-year goals. And it's because the action that the legislation requires isn't been really pushed forward. So what we're seeing with all of the action right now with the swabs is basically having conversations to actually take action and put real sustainable goal points so that we can reach our targets early and transparently. So those are the main things.
Is there any discussion about the actual enforcement of the composting laws for residential buildings, multi-unit buildings?
That would be a question for Mary Arnold. What's great about the legislative space, and they're having a meeting actually at 6:30 today, so probably right now. What they're in constant communication with not only legislators but with each other to talk specifically about containerization, because that's an ongoing conversation that honestly we've gotten some pushback for, but also in our meeting with Sean Abreu, and it was 2 months ago when we met with him. He said specifically the cost of containerization in low-income areas were some of the biggest issues that we talked about. And so there's pending legislation and conversation on that. But I think if there's any legislation that's going to be passed, it's going to be pushed around May, not right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Question from CB3.
CB14.
Oh, sorry.
It's on. Okay. What are some of the sustainable activities that you're thinking about for like a beachfront community? Because we're just ocean along in Far Rockaway.
Well, it's interesting that you said that, because we actually always wanted to have more representation from Far Rockaway. There was some issues that was brought up just a few months ago around the area, and people said that there was some issues with solid waste issues, trash, things like that in the area, and rats, but we haven't seen a lot of representation there.
None.
And so that's part of the reason why this is so important, is to have that conversation with you. And so what your solutions would be our solutions. And so we can put that on the table, in particular from our environmental justice chair, Bilal Key. We've talked about doing that, and we haven't seen, like, let's say, for example, in our area, sometimes we know who the environmental people are, right? We have Mark, right? Heather from the Forest Hills Green Team. Yeah. And Yeah, so like we know our local people, you know what I mean? So when we have our Q-Swab meetings, everyone knows like their space. Like in Southeast Queens, we have Andrea Scarborough, who's like, I mean, advocate. She's there at every meeting talking about Southeast Queens in particular. So we need your involvement. We need, you know, to hear your voice so that we can be able to come up with mitigations, spaces and solve issues.
Okay, I'm asking this because many times there are a lot of different organizations that come up with all these great ideas, but then they don't have the staffing, and I think Far Rockaway always get like the worst part of it.
Yeah.
Because we never get anybody that come out there. So, you know, I'm hoping that with this program that we will actually see people out there.
And,
So-
and it's a combination of a lot of things, because the Solid Waste Committee of City Council, for example, and City Council is really kind of like the more actionable space that we talk to. We have, from all of our Queens members, we have, Sandra is on the committee, and Jim Gennaro is on the committee, and I think that's it. So, you know, there may not be, your member may not be on this committee, which, you know, it's just how it is, right? But that's okay, because from someone like Sean, we could be able to have direct conversations to the city sanitation space and just say, hey, sanitation, let's go over here and start doing some work. And we can connect with the member and say, hey, this is what we're going to do in the area. And, you know, maybe there'll be a nice photo op, you know, but again, at the end of the day, work is being done. Not necessarily because action in the area may be done, but because we made the right connections at the right, in the right way.
So I hope you get your card so that we have someone that we can call and actually get some services.
I'll give you my number right now, if
Okay.
that's okay.
Yeah, well, Rich, we're on the internet. We're live right now, so
Oh,
I don't know
shoot.
if that, but we'll connect everybody with you post meeting. So, yeah.
All right, okay.
Yeah, and yeah, Rich, just to add on to the questions, if you can just explain to the board just the structure at QSWAB and how you guys can directly plug into the community boards, just as a follow-up next step going
Yes.
forward.
So community boards are a natural structure of QSWAP. You guys are natural members, right? So whoever, whether it's yourselves or a designee from your, from your community board, every meeting that we have, you guys are welcome. You guys are already members. So, but in addition to that, if you have multiple people who want to attend, sure, the more the merrier, right? What's also really fantastic about what we do and how we take issue is that at least this year we're more active. We like to go places. You know, we you know the Queens Botanical Garden thing, for example. There's like meeting spaces with the other swabs in other boroughs. You know, we're doing more things with other people, and we're finding, I didn't even know until this year that there was actually a Bronx swab, which is fantastic. So because they really need it, like we need it, but they really need it. But what's, I hope the people online don't really take offense to that, but that's okay. but
This is Queens, don't worry about it.
okay, good, good. So, but honestly, all jokes aside, there's a really great opportunity for us to work together, because since the time that I've been here for the last 4 years, we haven't had that consistent engagement. It's been, you know, sporadic from some boards, but if you guys really take, you know, the opportunity to come to our meetings, to talk about specifically what's going on in your areas, what I can do is section off a part of the meeting specifically for community boards. And so you can have that conversation and say, people are coming to my community board talking about beach erosion and issues in the beach. People are talking about issues with sewage. People are talking about trash receptacles, and there aren't enough of them. There was a couple of years ago, actually, there was a report that said in NYCHAs in particular, if the areas have NYCHA buildings, that only 1% of all NYCHA in the city are used, actually recycle. And that's, it's a weird concept, right? And so I talked to some people about recycling who are, people who live in Baisley and 40 projects in particular, and they said the receptacles are there. The only question is how are they used? And so the conversations with the residents may not be as strong. And some people may say it's because the city may say it's a federal space, the federal space may say it's a city problem, and so we may have some issues with that. But at the end of the day, and this is some things that we talked to Sean Abreu about, and at the end of the day, those conversations are a part of what we're trying to do, which is to increase the amount of receptacles in some spaces, because they may not be in a place where composting is a conversation, right? Composting may be an issue in our neck of the woods, in Kew Gardens, and some spaces over here, but it may not be an issue that a lot of people in parts of NYCHA spaces may really understand or respect. They're like, hey, we got plastics all over the ground, and it's just how it is. And people may clean it, yeah, but it's not being recycled. And that's part of the issue, which we want not only cleaner streets, but we also want a better environment, because where are these plastics in particular being sent? They're not sent in recycling space, they're sent in regular trash receptacles, and that can be changed.
Okay, any following questions? I see Vince from
Well, I'd just
CB5
like
again.
to ask that the borough president try to find out why and where the covers are for these solid waste cars, that it has been funded. And we'd ask the borough president also to advocate for the additional funding for monitors, the air monitors, and wish all my friends Ramadan Mubarak, Happy Easter, good Passover. Thank you.
Thanks, Vince, appreciate that. And yeah, definitely did take note of that flag, so yeah, we'll be following up with your office regarding both issues. So, yeah, but Rich, also, you touched on making recommendations to elected officials and the legislative bodies. Can you just dive a little bit further into the structure of what that looks like? Is that like on a rolling basis, an annual basis? And how can the community boards also plug into that process?
Sure. Our meetings are monthly, and so anytime that you want to come to our meeting, getting your information is going to be valuable, because we can put you in our email listserv. But of course, my information you can always get. Michael has it, Heather has it. So you can email me, you can text me, you can call me. I'm pretty available and accessible. But in addition to that, the way that we work is pretty straightforward. We work a lot through our committees. We have an environmental justice committee, and we have a legislative committee. Our environmental justice committee, in a lot of ways, Dolores, that's the committee that would take a lot of the action that specifically to address the issues that you talked about, and that's headed by Bilal Key, and Heather and Vincent. The issues that you guys mentioned would specifically be dealt with Mary Arnold, and which is the legislative action spaces, which, in a lot of ways, those are the areas altogether. Everything is legislative, because everything that we push for has to be addressed by council in some ways. But at least, it's done in a place that's appropriate, and then brought to the actual main board, and then we vote on key issues that we should support, or in some cases, we go to all the other swabs and then come up with joint testimony, like as what we see here on page 3. So, in a lot of ways, we've created almost like a city swab space, but of course, supported by each of our borough presidents respectively. So it makes what we do stand stronger, because it's not just, the 20 or 30 people on each swab. Now we have, 20, 30 people per swab that are taking action on legislative issues and supporting key things.
All right. Any further questions from the community boards? All right, seeing none. So, yeah, just thank you, everybody, for attending today's Borough Board meeting. Want to thank Richard for his presentation and taking in all our questions. So just looking forward to seeing everyone at our next Borough Board meeting, which will be April 7th, 5:30 p.m. So stay safe, everyone. Have a great night and enjoy the great weather today.
Can I just ask him, what's the funding like?
We have no funding.
For his organization, it's zero.
Yeah, no,
It's all volunteer.
yeah.
So you have a strong group of advocates
Yeah.
for us, working on their own time.
Yeah.
And sometimes they get donated space. Sometimes you have to pay for the space
Yeah.
too. You got to beg, borrow.